Hey listeners, Eliza and I are gearing up for a road trip through Southern California. We're exploring off-the-beaten-path food and drink spots and discovering how the state grows its incredible produce sustainably. Do you have a favorite hidden gem we should visit? Maybe a restaurant, bar, or market? We'd love your recommendations from San Diego to the San Gabriel Valley. Write us at hello@tastecooking.com to share. These special episodes, brought to you by our friends at Visit California, drop in late January. Stay tuned.
And I think food transcends time. You know, food is something that we've always had, unlike our devices that we've had for the last 5 minutes. And I think the fact that that timelessness of food, that's what gives people comfort, because they connect to something which is great bigger than they are. You know, it connects you to your whole ancestry.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Matt Rodbard. London chef and author Yotam Ottolenghi puts out cookbooks that meet at the intersection of practical and cool, with a recipe development process that is part Warhol Factory, part Bon Appetit Test Kitchen, and pure Ottolenghi. After tackling baking with his terrific book Sweet, and before that putting Israeli cooking on the international stage with Jerusalem, he most recently tackled the concept of comfort with his incredible new book, Comfort. In this conversation, we tackled the many ways comfort food is served around the world and how personal preference plays a major part in the quest for ultimate comfort. The result is a conversation that circles the globe and brings one of my all-time favorite recipe writers into focus. It's so cool having Yotam into the studio, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. Yotam, it's great seeing you.
Thank you, Matt. It's very good being here.
I always enjoy our conversations. I think you've been on the show. This is your 4th time.
I know. I'm a veteran of the industry.
I mean, I've been cooking from your books for years, and I cannot wait to talk about Comfort. Truly unique book in your canon. But first, when you end up, spending time in New York, where do you like to go? I know this trip is on book tour, but restaurant-wise, where do you like to go?
Where do I like to go? Last night I went to a place that I haven't been before. It's called Indian Accent.
Yeah.
It's an Indian restaurant that was just around the corner on 56th Street, I think, from West 56th. There was some really great Indian dishes with a modern twist, which is, I like those kind of things. Yeah. We had these kind of tiny little flat chapatis stuffed with blue cheese that arrived as a kind of an appetizer, and I had them and it was absolutely delicious. So that was a place that I've just discovered, so I'm happy to share with you. I'm sure you know all about it.
Yeah.
I like Buvette. Last time I was here, or maybe a few times ago, I went to Laser Wolf.
Yep.
Which you probably also know. I don't have secrets as such. There was a bakery that I visited, I think it was last time or at the time before Librai.
Yeah, Librai, of course.
It was incredible. So it's a kind of a Gulf Middle East pastry kind of place, which I've had a few pastries from them. They were amazing. Some of them with like black limes Danish. Oh my God.
Oh, that's
so
such
good.
a great combo.
Yeah.
I love that you've picked up on an Indian accent. I mean, it represents, New York has seen such an incredible boom in South Asian restaurants with Bungalow and Dhamaka, and really, I feel like we're finally catching up to London in terms of South Asian cuisine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yotam, your books are consistently mentioned on our show. We are always asking our guests, for a taste check, what are your favorite cookbooks ever? And, your books from Jerusalem and Plenty More Flavor Sweet, they end up being on this list. And I wanted to get a sense, how do you look at your cookbooks as a unified movement? I mean, do you feel there's themes happening? How do you look at this?
It's a really difficult question for me to answer, only because every book feels very independent, and it's kind of an individual identity, and it comes through my collaboration with a co-author. So I've had a couple of books that I published on my own, but all the rest are collaborations. And every book ends up being the story of the people that created it with me, and the process and the creative process itself. And I think that increasingly I can't imagine myself not working with someone, because this book has 4 authors on the cover, which is like a world record for me. I think it's a world record anyway. And the story of this particular book is that it started off with a conversation that I had with Helen quite a few years ago, when we wanted to do a book about the recipes that we like to cook at home for occasions, for dinner or for someone's party or for a Hanukkah party or Christmas, and we wanted to call it like the food we love, which was a weird name for recipe books because it almost implies that the other dishes we don't love, which is not true, but it's like
I get it.
But you get the sentiment, right?
Yeah.
And Helen and I had this conversation. Then COVID came, and we added Verena, who's an incredible cook so Helen has got her Asian background, Malaysia, Australia, and Verena's got in her history, she's got Germany and Scotland. These are the 2 places she grew up in. And Tara, who's been a long term collaborator with me and really specializes in Middle Eastern food, Palestinian. She wrote Palestine with Sami. So all of us together with all our stories, really, it's not about comfort in the sense that, comfort food has to have a stodge, that it has to have, cauliflower cheese or mac and cheese or a pizza, or it has all of the above. Don't worry about it. It's much more about the emotional connection to food, like back to what I said, the food we love.
Yeah.
All of us traveled a lot, and all of us carried food memories with us and ingredients with us, and kind of got those memories and ingredients transformed through the process of migration. And that's what the story is about. It's about recipes that are familiar but have gone through transformations over time through immigration.
I love the intro of the book. You are so clear about the different phases and levels that comfort kind of embodies in cooking. And you write, nurture, convenience, nostalgia, indulgence. Agreeing on the notion of comfort food is fairly straightforward. What's harder to pin down, though, are the actual dishes that hit these proverbial spots. And as you just said, it's about love. It's dishes you love, but comfort can mean many things. I guess at the beginning of your journey, I know you said it's where you were kind of compiling recipes that you love. How did you further flesh out this idea of comfort through many cultures in the world?
So we didn't flash it out completely. So what we did is we just started telling our individual stories. So for me, I've said it many times in the past, a recipe book or cookbook always starts from a list of recipes that I love cooking or my co-author likes cooking. And we don't have a story. We don't have a concept as such. I don't love the word concept because it kind of assumes that you need to kind of overthink things, which don't need overthinking. It's like, if you've got a book, you don't need a concept. But we start by choosing a bunch of recipes that we absolutely love cooking and we really want to show the world. And then the book kind of tells its own story. So in this particular, as I established, we had this idea that we wanted to create a book about food to cook at home, and we just started presenting those ideas to each other. So Helen brought in all these Asian noodle dishes and rice dishes that I love. She's this beautiful steamed fish. That like in the tradition of steaming fish in Chinese culture, but this particular one is cooked over rice. So it kind of steams in with the rice, or at the end of the cooking of the rice, and then you finish it off with the oil. And so you have kind of this wonderful thing, a bowl or a Dutch oven that's got a layer of rice, which is slightly crispy on the bottom, but then it's got that steamed fish on top. That's Helen's comfort food. Yeah. Or in my case, I'm just looking in front of me, there's a chicken meatballs and potato with lemon. So there's like a brothy, lemony, potatoey, celery stew in which chicken meatballs cook. That takes me back to Jerusalem of my childhood. So there wasn't a concept. The only concept was it is about us reliving memories of food, telling them to each other, and then thinking, what do we want to do about them? I
really appreciate the way that you just explained how comfort can appear in multitudes in a cookbook. Is there a recipe that you feel some readers may be surprised is a comfort dish?
Yes, I mean, I think anything that is not warm
Yes.
is would be surprising to some people in the northern hemisphere, in
Yeah.
cold regions of the world, that it would be comfort. So we have, for example, we have a recipe for green tea noodles.
Yeah.
That's a kind of a cold salad with radishes and a citrusy soy dressing, and it's like a slurpy salad. And I spent time in Japan in the past, and every time you go to these soba noodle places, it's the heat of summer in Tokyo or wherever you are, and these people are coming from the offices with their suits, and they go and sit in these soba noodles restaurants, and they slurp the cold noodles, and you go like, that is like pure comfort.
It's a hug for these folks, and it's different than a warm apple pie in New York City.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's exactly that. So that was the fact that we've got these kind of cold recipes, or we have a salad of slow-cooked courgettes, zucchini with flaky salmon, and all it is like zucchini that's been cooked in its own liquids for quite a while, and kind of breaks down and creates a dressing for that pulled salmon. And that is a cold summery dish that I can die for, when it gets all hot and I get bothered. And it's not it's not a surprise, because when you understand what comfort is it's an answer to your emotional needs. That's what comfort food is. It's an answer to a particular need at a particular point in time. And sometimes cold food is what you need. When you're
sweating in a subway and you walk out and you find a cold tofu stand in Seoul or in, somewhere in Jakarta. I love the cold tofu dish that you have.
Yeah.
You have a couple cold dishes.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a cold tofu dish, which is really very soft tofu with a soy-based sauce and flake chilies, and a whole pot bits of crunchy things that kind of make the soft tofu, give it a bit of texture. For me, this is just a wonderful thing. But obviously, there's all the other predictable comfort foods, from chicken to rice to noodles to pastas, to potatoes.
Let's get into the recipes. I'm so impressed with this North African sando, which is basically taking, the Shibuya Japanese Tokyo sando and bringing in North African flavors with harissa mayo. And I'm like, I've never thought about that. Yotam, how did you come up with this idea? It's really smart.
So it's Helen Go, who's my co-author, as I mentioned. We were talking about sandwiches, and I'm really reluctant to put sandwiches in my books normally.
That's interesting.
Because I said, who needs a recipe for a sandwich? I know it's very controversial.
Americans, we love sandwich recipes.
I just find it like, if you can give people a condiment, then they'll know to put it in a sandwich with whatever it is, ham or cheese or whatever they need. Who needs a recipe for a sandwich? But, and that's a very big but I think the whole culture of sandwiches is a massive thing, especially in the Japanese context. Those soft, bready, rich breads in which something nestles, like you hold it in, and you have this delicious combination of a soft crust, something with a bit of texture inside, and a lot of flavor. So Helen suggested, let's do a sando. I go like, do we need a sandwich recipe? I did my normal reaction. and she says, yes, I'll prove it to you. And then we started talking about what is going to be the flavor profile. So, of course, coming from a Jewish culture and coming from Israel, schnitzel, obviously. No, I don't need to say no need to say so much more.
Yeah.
But
with a little amba on it too.
Yeah, you could. We've got amba in a different context.
Cool.
But Helen said, let's do that. And also the nifty thing about it is that when we marinate the chicken in the yogurt or buttermilk sauce, it does two things. It tenderizes the chicken, but it also presents the kind of the adhesive that makes the breadcrumbs stick. So rather than have the messiness of egg, flour, breadcrumbs, we just have one thing, which is also the marinade. So you take it out of the yogurt sauce. It needs to sit there for a few hours to really give the flavor. And we had baharat and cinnamon, so to add those kind of sweet spices. And then you kind of just take some of that yogurt off the chicken, run it through the breadcrumbs and fry it.
Yeah, like a shallow pan fry, I would imagine.
A shallow pan fry, like a 1 centimeter. And then it goes all nice and crispy, and it goes into this very soft bread. And we added crunch by making like a very quick sliced slaw made out of cabbage and spring onion.
That's the Yotam way, adding that extra thing Because, you could just do it with like the cutlet and the great milk bread, but add that thing.
Yeah, I always tried to do something, but it was particularly hard in this book because this book is about the familiar.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want you don't want people to come and read and say, I don't know what that's all about. That's
Right.
that's discomfort. That's not comfort, right? That's not what this book is about.
Yeah.
But people identify those beautifully comforting sandwiches and they go, oh, okay, I know that. All I'm asked to do here, the extra, is to add a tablespoon of harissa to the mayonnaise, which would probably be there, and slice some cabbage and put on top. That's the whole twist. But you do get and I'll give you a little insight, because I was cooking it the other day and I gave it to my kids. So my kids never see white bread. They only see sourdough bread, because they know it's like anathema. So they go like, what is that bread doing there on the counter? What's the Warburton? That's the Warburton, which is the British brand.
Mm-hmm.
And they were kind of shocked and said, wait till I'll make it for you later. And I made it for them, and they absolutely loved it. I mean, you can do it with brioche as well if you want to be fancy, but they kind of...
You can make your own milk bread too.
And you can make your own milk bread.
Yeah.
So that's how this whole thing happened.
Another recipe that really jumped out, and it's really smart. It's a slow cooked green bean with feta and mascarpone. And I wanted to hear, the technique is unique in that it's not a quick wok fire and it's not a steam of these beans. These beans are being cooked slowly. And then you're adding this double cheese element, which is very Yotam. It's very, you can't just have one cheese. You got to have two cheeses, which I think is smart because you want a layer of flavor. Talk about this dish a little bit.
I'm very happy. You said it's new, but actually it's very old technique.
Yeah.
So if you go around the Middle East and Turkey, you get this slow cooking vegetables, especially with beans. And I grew up on that. So effectively what it is a haricot vert or any green beans that you're going to have. And it could be done with broad beans, anything really. Cooked in their own juices. So you add olive oil, garlic, maybe onion, and we also add a few cherry tomatoes. And in fact, you put it on the stovetop. There's quite a bit of oil there, like half a cup or something.
And that's key. It's a lot of oil.
It's a lot of oil. It's key. And you put the lid on and you just forget about it for a good half hour. So what happens is that all the liquid comes from the actual beans. You don't add any extra liquid, so the flavor all remains in the pot. It's kind of confits the beans, and they overcook. So I normally don't like people to overcook their veg, but in this book, I ask people to overcook their veg, because if you want them to be comforting, you need the sugar levels to go higher,
right?
And you need them to be softer. Right. So that's comfort. So these beans are I love them. I cook them all the time. I just throw them in the pot, put the lid on, and you've got a meal at the end. I take some feta and mix it up with the mascarpone, just to kind of give that little bit of creaminess there, because I can, but you don't have to have.
You can just add feta.
You can just add feta, or you can just have the bean stew by itself. It's a delicious bean stew. You can have it with eggs. You can have it as kind of with rice as the main meal if you like. There's nothing in. We call it beans on toast because we wanted to take on the British beans on toast that people have for breakfast. So we actually take a sourdough bread and just put all those beans on top. But if you want to just put some bread croutons, even if you buy them, in the beans. Delicious.
Yeah, on toast was how it spoke to me with that preparation. So you're slathering the feta mascarpone on the bottom of it, and you're topping it with the beans.
Yeah, but it's all about the beans. So the toast is just a bit of crunch on the bottom, but it's the soft beans that I love so much. And listen, this is normal if you think about Italian cooking antipasti. All those vegetables, the aubergines, the zucchinis, they're all overcooked. Or not, I don't want to even call them overcooked. They're just cooked.
They're cooked properly in that mushy way that we accept. I mean, I think shocking beans and having really like top beans from a wok is one way to do it, and it's great. But the mush is comfort. I agree. And the sugar levels, you write about in the intro, how sugar is a key component to why we love, like, what makes a comfort dish. Yeah,
I think about a French onion soup. I mean, you take a bunch of onions, you don't want to touch them, but once they've cooked for a good hour, they become so sweet. I think that's a top comfort food. We have a kind of a slight equivalent to that using Cavallo Nero, but we also have the cheesy toast on top as well as a kind of our take of on a French onion soup.
I never underestimate one of your rice dishes. I feel you're blushing a little because you're very modest, but your rice dishes come up all the time on our show, how they're the best out there in terms of recipe development. And one that stuck out is the cheese ball lemon rice with chili butter. And it's a steaming technique, which I feel is a little less common here in the States. I think we typically will do fried rices, or we'll definitely boil our rices. Talk us through this cheesy rice and how steaming rice is such a great way.
So listen, I mean, I have to give credits to all the cultures that cook rice in different ways. And there is really, I mean, rice is, first of all, there's the different degrees of different types of rice, from the short grains to the long grains, that take different cooking techniques. So this technique that I love so much works really well for long grain rice, like basmati. And so what I do, and I found that in the last 5 or 6 books that I've published, each one has at least one baked rice recipe.
Baked rice, exactly.
I find it really, really comforting. Effectively what it is a pot, an oven-proof dish, in which you put olive oil or butter and some aromatics, whether it's a skin of a lemon, whether it's star anise, whether it's cardamom, it could be whole garlic cloves, it could be shallots, whatever it is that you want to cook in that oil or butter. And you let that cook a bit, and then you add your rice. And on top of that, you put the rice needs to be washed, and it's good if it sits there in the water to just kind of soften a bit and lose some of the starches. So a bit of soaking, and then the rice goes on top, and then you add stock or boiling water, and you cover it really well with foil, or if you have a tight-fitting lid, and you don't, or both. You forget about it in the oven for a good 20 minutes, half an hour. And what happens is that the rice steams itself, a bit like what I talked about with the vegetables earlier. You don't need to worry about it at all, and becomes really fluffy, especially if you got rid of some of the starch through the soaking. And then this particular one that you're talking about, it's like a cheese ball rice.
It's amazing.
It's a wonderful thing that my kids love. It came to me as an idea where Noor, my co-author on the last 2 Test Kitchen book, did these cheese balls. And they were cheese balls, sunrise. They were just cheese balls that were delicious. And I thought, what would happen if you just dunk those into rice as it's cooking? I don't know where that is.
You have 12 little balls in the rice.
Each rice ball is a combination of cheddar and ricotta and what else? Mozzarella and feta, and they're just rolled into balls, very easy. And then when you put the rice with the boiling liquid in the oven, you just dot them there and cover and put in the oven. And as you cook, the cheese kind of spreads a bit, but there's still an area with the cheese and without. So you get the balance. So you get that kind of rice with cheese immersed in it. Yeah. And Verena, who kind of tested the recipe, said, "Oh, it doesn't look so great." And then she added that. At home I wouldn't do all of that, but she added that chili butter that goes on top, gives it color, with some olive and spring onion, so it becomes a whole meal.
Yeah, adding an aromatic butter to fried rice or steamed rice. What a great technique. I think it obviously adds a richness and layers the flavor a bit more. But I love how you put the balls within it. I mean, it's such a smart move. Did Noor spend some time in the States, right? I feel like Noor...
Yeah, she went to the CIA.
She went to CIA, right.
And she worked in various restaurants in New York.
I was like, Noor definitely spent some time with putting cheese balls into rice. Like, that's an American... talk about an American technique in the best way, or, you know.
She spent time. She knows more about American food than I do.
Noor is amazing. I want Noor back. I want to welcome Noor back on the show.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah. So when I'm reading through the book, I'm thinking to myself, I'd like to figure out my comfort dish, like what speaks to me the most, because this book is highly personal. And there's a lot of options. Like, I could have gone in the roasted chicken route. I could have gone into a barbecue route. But to me, I thought about it a lot. I wanted to say this. To me, the most comforting dish from this book is the linguine with miso butter, shiitake, and spinach.
So interesting.
Wow. I mean,
could you tell me why? I'm just curious. Why this one in particular?
Okay, so great. Thank you for asking. Thank you for asking me to talk on my podcast. I'm joking. Honestly, 2 things. First, miso and butter for me, going back to like foil yaki and this like grand Japanese American Western crossover like technique has always spoken to me. And I think either it's tenjin in Korea or miso in Tokyo, Japan.
Hmm.
But also, I like a pasta and butter. I like a butter noodle, and I think to me, when you have the simplicity of these ingredients and you decide that shiitake is your mushroom, this is like an uber umami dish, and to me, I want that when I'm thinking I need comfort because of variety of reasons, celebration, I need feeling down, and yeah, it's a great one.
And thank you. And also, what I love about it is in the great tradition of certain pasta dishes that come from Italy, it's a dish in which that you cook the sauce while the pasta is cooking,
Yes.
so like cacio e pepe, all those recipes that are the sauce is made through a process of emulsification rather than cooking down something for a long time, which is obviously also great. But the comfort of ease is also part of this recipe. As long as you prepare what you need, you have your mushrooms, and it's not a lot of preparation.
Yeah.
Soy sauce and miso. And as the pasta cooks, because you're going to need some of that water for the emulsification, you just cook down your mushrooms and the spinach so that it's kind of ready to collect the pasta when it's ready. And I think, again, comfort comes in so many ways, and we try to touch on all of them, but the ease of cooking, the immediacy of cooking is also super important.
It's a really good point. Sometimes we just don't want to cook and that's why we go out to restaurants for comfort or go to takeaway restaurants. But, how do you know when the emulsification is ready and proper? I feel like that's a tough thing to negotiate as a home cook.
I think you see it happening.
Yeah.
So first of all, I think it's important to not cook your pasta in too much water, so you get more starch left in the water that you've collected from the pot, and then just don't add. You need to keep the pot very warm. So there is more evaporation going on when you add your water, and you kind of shake it with the pasta and the other ingredient, and then add it in small additions, because you don't want to throw all the water there and then you end up too much water. But you see it becomes all velvety or silky at that particular point. And there's obviously there's butter here, so butter and the starchy water really gives you that kind of velvety texture.
Yeah.
You see it happening, and once you've done it a few times, you recognize it. But I guess the trick is just not to add too much of the pasta water.
I think that's a great point, to have a shallow boiling point or boiling height, so you have really starchy water.
Yeah.
And serve immediately.
Serve immediately.
Somebody's be like, you do these emulsifications, and you're like, and then you're chit-chatting away with your friends in the kitchen, and you serve it 3 minutes later, and you're like,
There's two types of dishes that you cook. There's the dishes that you cook a la menu, and there's the dishes that you pre-cook. And I'm a firm believer of pre-cooking when there's a lot at stake. When there's a friend over that you don't care to kind of just be distracted and while they're standing there chatting to you, that's fine. But for meals, I wouldn't cook that if I've got 6 people sitting at the table, and it's just, it depends what you want. But just generally speaking, this is the one that you want to cook when you're super relaxed and there's
no chatting and catching up about whatever it may be, and you're gonna be distracted.
Totally.
It's all about the strategy of the dinner party, and you just gotta have it all done when your guests arrive. That's the bottom line.
I was thinking about, you mentioned the dinner party quite a lot. You mentioned it once, but I've been thinking about it quite a lot recently. And there is this, I don't know, I'm not so aware of how things are in the US, but in the UK, people talk about the end of the dinner party. Like, people do not have dinner parties anymore. And at least since COVID, and from my perspective, I still go to dinner parties, but I think there's less and less dinner parties. And I think also the dinner parties changed their features. So I think in the past, many dinner parties in my mind were about like a competitive sport. You were there, you were going to impress your guests, right? Like that
beef bourguignon.
Yes, and a bunch of other things
like
to make it.
Pâté en croûte.
And then you finish with a sabayon that you just whisk on there. And it's just so stressful because you need to impress so much. And why I love this book so much, but not just this book, but just this different state of mind, is that I find that people do not want to cook like that so much anymore. They want to cook. They want to go into the kitchen for a relaxation and a break from the real world, and for grounding. So we're all our phones. It's also fidgety and it's also noisy.
Yeah.
You come home. I just want to cook something easy and simple that can go no wrong, that I know really well, rather than really challenge myself. So, and this is why I think the old school dinner parties are kind of over now. And since COVID, there's terrible war and suffering going on in the world that I feel very helpless to when I see them, because it's actually happening in a part of the world where I grew up, and I feel so much pain, and I don't know what to deal with it. So often I just go to the kitchen and kind of engage in something that feels a little bit real. And I think this is a very, very important sign of our time, that people cook for comfort themselves and to find some solace. I think that's a really important moment.
I'm glad you brought it up. It's kind of why I love the Shabbat tradition. I think on Friday nights, Dina Sussman wrote a beautiful book about it. You have to unplug, and you can call it Shabbat, you can call it whatever you will, but it's a time when you take your phones and put it away, and then you have your dinner to start, and then you have a weekend. You have a prolonged period of not being plugged in, and I think that the dinner party, taking a little bit from Shabbat, that culture, is smart.
And like you said, it starts with food.
Yeah.
And I think food is transcends time. Food is something that we've always had, unlike our devices that we've had for the last 5 minutes. And I think the fact that timelessness of food, that's what gives people comfort, because they connect to something which is great bigger than they are. It connects you to your whole ancestry, and it's really important to really be very sensitive to that and allow food to do that to you, rather than take it immediately to the arena of mobile phones.
Oh my God. Are you noodling on a dinner party book, Yotam? Are you thinking about a dinner party? I feel you've thought this through a little bit.
No, I don't think I need a dinner party book. I think this is a dinner party book,
but
for a different kind of dinner party. I think there's all these dishes that are created on big platters and big pots that you bring to the table, and they're cooking for a long time, and they've given you the ease and comfort that you need, and you just present them, and people are normally very happy to eat something that they've had before.
It actually makes me really happy when you say that this is a dinner party book, because to your point, we don't have to be told that a recipe is for a dinner party. You just do it.
Totally.
There's these prescriptive books, we publish some ourselves, where it's like the dinner party, and fine, that's a good way to sell a cookbook. But frankly, there's so many recipes, and I love this book. It's probably outside of Jerusalem, which is just as close to me, I feel this is my favorite of your books. It's wonderful.
Talk about a dinner party. I happened to open the page on the chicken with the orzo and porcini.
Yeah,
that's a dinner party book, because the dinner party dish, because you bring that pot to the table, and that chicken just sits there in the orzo with the mushrooms, and you smell the celery and the lemon. And it's just like, that is, why would you want something fussy when you can have something so unfussy?
Yeah, the communal plate really, the dish, the Dutch oven, the platter really feels dinner party to me. I want to talk a little bit about restaurants. You have a lot of them, mostly in London, Geneva, I believe you have one as well.
It's coming. It hasn't opened yet, but it's coming.
Your website made me think it was around, but a good friend of my mom's, Carolyn, just came back from London. She smuggled some tahini cookies for my mom, which are in her freezer now. So my point is that there's such great demand for your restaurant, and really you do a lovely job with the aesthetics and their beautiful spaces. Have you been intentionally avoiding America with these concepts? Because I'm very jealous, and also I think they would do really well here.
No, I haven't been intentionally avoiding America. I've actually, we've had conversations in the past with restaurateurs and operators in America about potentially doing something here. And I will tell you something that would be very inconclusive and not really satisfying, I'm sure. It just didn't work out for all sorts of reasons. And it's funny, because when you think of opening a restaurant in a different city or a different country, it's so exciting to start with. Like, I've never lived in America. I have when I was a child, but not for a very long time. And I've always wanted to spend time in New York. And then we start having these conversations with other operators, and they go, "Oh, this is complicated. The rules are complicated. It's hard to get a space. The rents, the unions, this, that, and the other." And you start understanding how complicated it is. It immediately takes the joy out of the process, because you realize there's just so much blue tape and so much complexity to do before you can get to the fun bit, which is producing the food and opening a table, that I get terrified. And I don't know that London is much easier to open a restaurant in, but I think it is a bit easier, actually, speaking to people who have operated on both sides of the Atlantic. But I know London, and we know what we're doing, so it's already easier. But restaurants are so bloody complicated to run and hard to run, and they've become increasingly more complicated and difficult to run since ingredients become so expensive, and we've got
the escalating the sticker shock of prices on menus is certainly, we can't avoid it now.
The prices, and then also the staffing.
The staffing. I mean, right. You've laid out a very good reason to not open restaurants. You continue in London because you have home field advantage and you're smart operator there. Thank you for being very transparent, because I think we would love to have you, but we also want you to be happy. And it wouldn't be a great trip here if you had to deal with a restaurant.
It's like, restaurants are tough. Anyone in business will tell you that it is a tough thing. And but the annoying thing is this: the restaurateurs always complain, right? Like, you get a restaurateur into a building and they say like, it's stuff. So why do you go open more restaurants?
I know.
I don't have an answer to this madness, but it's just the way it is. But it is genuinely hard.
It's hard, but you enjoy, in London at least, you have a number of locations and formats. And do you feel like London, there'll be more restaurants that you're opening there for your own portfolio?
We are. I mean, we have been expanding in London because we have the infrastructure, we have the knowledge of the market, and we have the people that serve our company that we do. So it's just easier rather than starting somewhere else. But we are we're dipping our toes in the water with Geneva. We've got a collaboration there with the Mandarin Oriental Hotel. And they have a lovely space that's kind of off on the street that will allow us to do something. And that will be the test of how you can do it in another country.
How do you judge success for a Geneva location of?
There's the financials. Obviously, it needs to be break even and make you feel safe in that department.
Yeah.
It also needs for me to feel like Geneva is so different from London in the sense that it's much more culinarily traditional. It's like France, Italy, Switzerland. There's not much else there. And in terms of the food influences, London is all about, it's a cosmopolitan place. You've got everything. So it would be really interesting for me to see, or there'll be a sign of success, that people come in and come back and go, okay, this is the kind of food that I love to go back to, not just as a curiosity, but for comfort, going back to comfort. Like, even though it's different, I can find comfort in it.
It seems like in an international city that has a lot of tourism, that putting it in a hotel, in a high-end hotel, is perfect fit for you. So,
but I never take anything for granted.
No.
I mean, I think anyone who runs restaurants will tell you that sometimes there's something about the chemistry of the place. There's something about everything not just coming back together, and you can be the most successful restaurateur and still have failures. So I always expect that to happen.
John George closing. I mean, he's closed restaurants. Like, everyone closes restaurants.
Everybody closes restaurants. Everybody gets it wrong from time to time, and you just need to be ready for that. This is not what I think will happen, but you just always need to be realistic.
Yotam, on This Is Taste, we ask guests about their discerning taste. So to close this interview, here's a little rapid fire, fast and furious taste check. Are you ready?
I am ready for you.
The best fruit?
Peach.
Tell me why.
Because there's nothing like a peach in season. I mean, there's a lot of bad peaches around. But when we go to Greece sometimes in the summer, and and they are like the most seasonal country that I know of. So when you go to Greece in the summer, all you can get is zucchinis, aubergines, tomatoes, onions, and peaches. Roughly, that's all you get.
Peaches
That's all you get.
everywhere.
And those peaches are so juicy, they're so beautifully yellow, and you just bite into them, and they when it's kind of drips all over you. There's no other fruit like it.
You can eat like 6 at a time.
Oh, you can eat, and you can put them on ice cream, but it's the biting into that peach.
Where do you like to go in Greece? Do you have like a favorite?
I like to go to the Peloponnese.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful part of the Greek mainland, and there is an island that we go to quite often called Kia, Kia. It's a beautiful island. It's close to Athens.
Mm-hmm.
It's not one of those picture perfect ones. It's kind of a little bit more rocky but it's stunning.
Stunning. The worst vegetable.
The worst vegetable, I really am going to find it quite difficult. I'm going to upset a lot of people, but I'm just going to go out and say it. Sweet potato. It's not my worst vegetable. I mean, I cook with it. I can do things with it. But if I had to choose a vegetable not to cook with, it would be a sweet potato. Here I go. I just said it.
You said it. Sweet potato yams. You're upsetting some people. But I mean, I'm not even going to litigate this.
I'm going to be upsetting a lot of people. I think one of the problems that I have with sweet potato is that it's very, very easy to overcook. When you get it nice, like a wedge of sweet potato that hasn't been overcooked with a bit of resistance and something good, it is delicious. But I've had so many like mushy sweet potatoes that have kind of made me go off them. So yeah, I know I've upset.
I asked you a tough question. You answered with a good response. The best dessert.
Okay, the best dessert is anything with meringue and cream.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I'm from London, and we have pavlovas and Eton mess and a whole range of things. And this is what I specialize in at home as a dad. I do one of my rolled pavlovas or meringue roulades. Or it's just so good. It's just like sweet on creamy on fruity. Those are the three things that can make the best dessert, and that's me.
And it works year round too. It doesn't have to be summer only.
No, because there's so many wonderful, and in sweet we have a recipe for the pavlova that uses figs that are kind of late, and then you can do like caramelized apples or pears. It's just, you can do whatever you like.
Restaurant you are most excited to visit in the world?
I was in Spain this summer, and I went to an island called Formentera. Mm-hmm. It's a small island off Ibiza, and we went to a restaurant called Escudol Formentera or Escudol Forada, and they do really, really good rice dishes, paella style. They've got different names, but I had this incredible tomato salad there that it was just blew my mind. It was fresh, delicious tomatoes with some tuna belly.
Oh yeah.
With soy dressing and pickled chilies and spring onion, and it was just like this big platters of tomatoes and tuna, with a kind of a Japanese dressing. It was sublime. But it's on the beach. It's very basic. It's hard to get places. No, don't rush there unless you know that you can. But yeah, it was a pretty remarkable meal.
Is the tuna belly just like a quick sear, or is it tinned?
No, not tinned. I think it's raw.
It's raw.
It's raw. It's
beautiful.
It's just very thinly cut off the belly, and it's raw. And I'm still thinking how I'm going to recreate that dish, or basically plagiarize it, steal it, and
copyright a recipe. So legally, it doesn't matter. It's more like homage.
No, it gave me a lot of ideas what to do. And I'm working on something inspired by that, but quite different. It's a tomato and mortadella salad. So I thought,
different.
I thought of replacing that tuna with mortadella. I know it's very different, but I think I can do something similar. It's still a work in progress, but yeah.
Do you have another book or two lined up in the hopper?
Yes, I mean there's always books.
Yeah.
And I have not yet got tired of books. It's nothing that I can tell you right now, but there's always recipe development going on.
Yeah. Well, you have the Times column. You have a column in the UK, I'm sure.
Yeah, in the Guardian.
So you have columns in two of the world's most prestigious publications.
Yeah.
Plus you got books, but they flow together, your recipe development, right? Into books, TV.
Yeah, it does. It really does. It's funny how it is. It's all a very natural thing. I've got a small team of recipe developers, and we work on things that we feel like working, and then we kind of thread them into wherever it is that we want to do. Our website, we do a lot for our own website and social media channels, publications, but the books are the big thing. So that you kind of, the book is kind of the engine behind the operation, because you've got a deadline and it's 100 plus recipes, and you are really very, very focused.
Are you doing television too?
I am not much on TV. I had 2 TV shows on British television in the past, on guest appearances, but I don't do much television.
It's not.
It takes a lot of time.
Yeah,
when I had kids, I thought like I'm not going to see them if I do TV.
Is there a restaurant you wish you could bring back from the dead?
The restaurant that doesn't exist anymore, as far as I know, was in Bruges in Belgium. It's called the Carmelite, or the Carmelite. And it was a 3 Michelin star restaurant. Definitely my first 3 Michelin star experience. I haven't had so many of those. And I remember I went there in the 90s when I used to live in Amsterdam. And myself and 2 friends took a car and drove all the way there for dinner. And we had no idea where we were going. We were so underdressed. We had to change in the car. We were scruffy and shamefully unprepared to this restaurant, which was like white tablecloths and cloches and everything. But I remember eating rabbit for the first time, and some shellfish that was just sublime. And then there was this incredible cheese trolley that arrived. And since then, I really fell out of love with Michelin star restaurants. I can't be bothered anymore. But this one was absolutely sublime. We just went back to Amsterdam feeling like the happiest people, because we've tasted food like we've never tasted before.
And the presentation probably. And you're such a visual chef and author that you must have really been drawn to the way it was presented.
And there's something about traditional Belgian French cooking where there's so much attention to detail with the sauce reductions, etc., etc. When you see a really good one, it just blows your mind.
Yeah, but you aren't really into the 3 Michelin star tasting menu game these days.
No, I find if I end up in one of these restaurants, and I don't want to sound ungrateful, I just feel like I never want to go back. I leave so full and confused, and I know that a lot of people love that world, and I also used to love it, but it's a stage in life.
I love that sentiment, the stage in life. I think that's like the best way to put it, because you're not yucking on someone's yum. If they love going to multi-course omakase, good for them.
Oh my God. And I remember just kind of preparing myself mentally for days for these meals and enjoying them so much.
Right.
But then I realized that I have more fun on the eating food on the street. And then so this is where I go now.
Or cooking for your kids.
Or cooking for my kids. Yeah.
I get that. A couple more. This is really fun. And as I mentioned at the top, this next question, your books are often answered and responded in various forms, but your favorite cookbook of all time?
So I don't have, but I'll talk about cookbooks that influenced me. So the books that came out of the people who were in Japanese, from David Leibovitz to
Tanis,
to David Tanis,
Andy Barigani. Out of there.
Andy Barigani, who I'm going to spend time with in a couple of nights doing an event here in New York. Great. He's going to interview me and Deborah Madison. The California 1780s, 90s cookbooks, I find them so inspiring. And when I started cooking vegetables seriously, as opposed to not just intuitively, but through, learning, I would always go to these books because there's just so much there. And the love of vegetables, which we share, really has its root for me in these particular cookbooks. So especially with Deborah Madison and her vegetable cookbooks, there's just so much there in terms of technique. So,
and of course there's Alice Waters
and and the Japanese books are incredible. And I always go back and I look and I get inspired.
Love that sentiment. Have you dined at Chez Panisse recently?
Not recently. I've only been there once.
Yeah.
And when I published my first book in the US, Plenty.
Yeah.
I went there and to have lunch, and it was a very memorable lunch.
It's wonderful. Keep that memory close.
Yeah, it was my first and only time there.
That's really nice. Your favorite city outside London to visit for food?
I kind of have two. I love Istanbul and I love Kuala Lumpur.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've got two cities that I love eating in, so you'll have to take two, I'm afraid.
That's okay.
So very different, but also similar in the sense that those two places are in the midst of multicultural ancient worlds or old worlds, and really created those cuisines that are so the Ottoman Empire stretched half a century at its peak, and it has taken from the Balkans and from Persia and from North Africa and from the Arab world, and those foods are just, it's so rich. I when I go to Istanbul, I go and get like these mussel stuffed with rice on the street, and I'm just happy, and fresh fish and all the wonderful breads. So that's Istanbul, and I feel the same about KL, Kuala Lumpur. Helen, that I mentioned, took me there for a few years ago for this massive culinary journey with our friend Ling. They're both from there.
Oh, fun!
And I just ate 3 times my weight in everything that there was to have: Malay food, Chinese food, and Indian food, and those things come together so incredibly well there. And we have a lot of nods to Malaysian cuisine
in the noodles section. It's very
even the shakshuka that has tamarind in it.
I saw that.
And star anise and coriander and fish sauce, and it's like, this is like sacrilege, but
I know, it's like the Ottolenghi shakshuka has tamarind.
Yeah, I know, but like I said to Helen, like, let's just do this because people who love shakshuka also, I mean, like, if you think of something like nasi lemak, which is the traditional dish of Malaysia, there's nothing between a nasi lemak and a shakshuka at first sight, but then you think about, actually maybe there is a little something. There's the egg, there is the kind of the chili paste, or there's the kind of the deep umami flavor of a tomato and a chili. So you do get that. So you can marry things together, which is what I love. Even when they on the surface they feel like, what's those two things have in common?
You're trying too hard to make it a concept, but ultimately this is well considered.
It's not a concept. It's just like, it's borrowing an idea and seeing, how would that work? And I do love that shakshuka so much. And you have it with rice instead of a pita bread. I mean,
don't call it a concept. That's what we're gonna say here for Yotam. It's you just can't use that word around here. It's more than that. Last one, your favorite sandwich.
Oh yeah, my favorite sandwich. I was going to talk about that sando that we covered earlier, but I'm going to talk about sabir.
Oh yeah,
yeah, because it's very close to my culture. Growing up in Israel, it's a sandwich that Jewish immigrants that came from Iraq have brought to the kind of the culinary cacophony of Israel / Palestine, which has a lot of delicious sandwiches, and they have brought in fried eggplant and amba, which is a savory mango pickle with fenugreek and turmeric and tahini sauce and hard-boiled egg. All that goes into that particular sandwich, plus a couple of other things that I probably forgot. And in this book, we have a little tribute to the sabih sandwich in the form of jacket potato, which also has the fried eggplant, the green tahini sauce, and
jacket potato.
Yeah, it's a jacket potato
cool.
that has fried eggplant, fried aubergine, green tahini, pickled red cabbage, and a bit of amba, and it's just so good. I mean, people go, jacket potato really without dairy? And I said, yeah, just give it a go. It's so good.
Amazing idea and concepts. What a great conversation. I appreciate your time, Yotam. Thank you so much for joining This Is Taste.
Thank you, Matt. I loved it.
This Is Taste is hosted by Eliza Abarbanel and me, Matt Rodbard. The show is produced by Shalia Harris and Pat Stango and edited by Clayton Gumbert. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter for updates on all cool things that are happening.